Hello and welcome into the Lockdown Wolves postcast. I'm going to be joined by Jack Borman following the Wolves' blowout win over the Utah Jazz. The Wolves postcast comes up next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Wolves postcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of the daily Lockdown Wolves podcast here on the Lockdown Network. Pinch hitting today for the great Luke Inman, who's out, usually hosts the postcast with Jack. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so the Timberwolves blow out the Utah Jazz. We talked about this. We just did this 24 hours ago after the Wolves beat the Suns in a really exciting win, and we were a little bit worried about, the Wolves this year have struggled against bad teams, or at least have not played as well as they should. Second night of a back-to-back. We didn't know who'd be available with the illness around the team. Ended up, everybody that was sick played. Mike Conley didn't play due to a sprained thumb. The Jazz came in having lost, I believe it was, 7 straight games. We talked about this last night at the end of the postcast, but they've been essentially rotating their best players, like who plays, who doesn't. But everybody played in this game. All the regular starters, Clarkson came off the bench, everything that you'd expect to see for a normal team, all their best players, because turns out they own the Timberwolves pick in 2025. So it's in their best interest to send the Wolves to as many losses as they possibly can. Ultimately, though, the Wolves win this thing by scoring a season-high 138 points. They've got finally a homestand coming up, like their longest homestand of the year, I think, to this point. And this is a weak spot in the schedule for them. Really, the only downside in this game is Julius Randle had a groin strain in the, I think, first quarter, early second quarter, maybe, and didn't return to the game, was quickly ruled out. And we obviously don't know anything else yet. But we got to see a lot of guys play that don't normally play. It was a really fun game overall once the Wolves kind of got over their slow start. So I guess we could start there. They started slow. They were down 15 in the first quarter, but then it was smooth sailing from there on out.
Yeah, no question. The Jazz started this game up 25-10 at the 4:38 mark of the first quarter, and then for the final 40 minutes and change for the Wolves, it was an absolute blitzkrieg. 128-88 is what I had it at for the Wolves to win by 25, which is pretty crazy for them to respond in that way after their legs looked pretty heavy in the first part of that first quarter. A lot of shots were short. They started 0 of 5 from 3. The Jazz made 5 threes before the Wolves even made 1. You're thinking, oh gosh, here's the recipe for, here's the recipe for another one of those games where it's either going to be, a loss or kind of one of those moral loss type of victories like we saw against the Hawks on Monday. But the way that they turned this thing around was awesome. No doubt. Super fun game to watch. Really, if you're, watching for stars or non-stars alike. But yeah, the Wolves now 9-1 when they score at least 119 points this season, which is a pretty darn good mark to keep. So it really just goes to show that, for as much as the defense is kind of the backbone of this team, I think, how easily they're able to win is really dictated by how efficiently they're able to score the ball. And they certainly scored it with a high level of efficiency in this game. They shot 61% from the floor. That was their best mark of the season by 4.5%. Their previous best was that nail biter home loss against Memphis a couple weeks ago. And then season high 55% from 3. Previous best was 46.7. So had that by about 9% there. And that was in the Denver game. That they had that previous high this past Saturday at home. So, and then a season high 38 assists. They shared the ball really, really well. Their spacing in this game was awesome. And again, I just think when you've got a guy like Anthony Edwards who gets it going early in the game, not necessarily as a scorer, but as a playmaker, really opened everything up. The Jazz were bringing 2 to the ball on every single pick and roll that he had. And they found Rudy Gobert early and often in the middle of the floor. And Rudy did a good job of paying off a couple of those ant passes, making a couple of good kick out passes. And then the ball, was able to find Anthony Edwards again later in the possession. And he didn't really score the ball when that happened, he just attacked and then made the right read and ended up collecting 5 assists in the first quarter of this game. It was the 10th time in Ant's career he's had at least 5 assists in a quarter, which I thought was pretty notable for him. And just got it going with the playmaking early, and then kind of let it ride off of that. And I thought too that again we got over the sluggish start, but Ant was a huge part of the team really turning the tide. I thought. Chris Finch kept him out there. And so Ant played the entire first quarter, and then Chris Finch kept him out there to start the second quarter, played the first 4 minutes or so of the second quarter, and continued his really strong play from the end of the first quarter. Just helped kind of flip the script. He made a 3 early in that quarter, and then helped get Naz Reid going after Julius Randle got hurt early in that second quarter. Helped served up a great pass for a Naz 3. That was his first of 4 that he made in the first half there, or second of 4 that he made in the first half, while he was really kind of on a heater there. And so Ant was a big part in kind of kickstarting that. He passed the torch to Naz. So just from what he did in the first half was tremendous. And then in that third quarter, he just decided that the game was over. He came out and just absolutely dominated the Jazz in that third quarter. Scored 16 of the Wolves' 44 points in the third quarter, 5 of 7 from the floor, 2 of 3 from 3. Got to the free throw line 5 times in that quarter, made 4 of them. And had 4 more assists in that third quarter, which was another great one for him. And for Ant overall in the night, ended up with 36 points and 12 of 18 shooting, 2 points per shot for Ant, which is an amazing mark. Like again, that's like an offensive rating of 200 on his shots, which is what you want. Any points per shot that's really above 1.2 or 1.3 is doing really good work. So for him to be up there at 2 is pretty remarkable. Made 6 of his 9 threes, 6 of his 7 free throws, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks. Just did everything for the Timberwolves.
Yeah, how about following up the 4-block game with a 3-block game? I mean, it's the sort of thing that I mean, there was a moment there. He doesn't have a triple-double in his career, does he? I don't think he does.
That's a good question.
I don't think he does. If he does, it's like 1. But like there was a moment there. The game wasn't close enough for that to really matter. But I mean, for him to do some of the whatever, like that's huge from him. And we've never seen it for a stretch. And so, I mean, hopefully it continues here. But 36, 11, and 6 with 3 blocks. And to your point, 36 points and 18 shots and 11 assists. I mean, just the sheer amount of offense that he generated, and only having 3 turnovers after having turnover issues just, 24 hours earlier in Phoenix is huge.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think he was really energized by playing with the young guys, which is something that has been a consistent theme so far this season. Yeah, Ant does not have any triple doubles in his career. But yeah, I think for Ant, when he had those minutes where he was playing, what was it, late in the first quarter with Rob Dillingham, Naz Reid, Jalen Clark, and Gobert out there, and then started the second quarter playing with Randall, Dillingham, Clark, Reid. Like I think he feels a heightened sense of responsibility and kind of locks into the details a little bit more when he's playing with some of those younger guys. And in some of the games where maybe he backslides a little bit, or it's a game where 2 games ago he was really frustrated, and then the game before, so he really struggles, then makes an adjustment and plays really well. And then in the next game, we'll kind of backslide a little bit and not stick with the passing, or not stick with making the right play because he wants to score, or, wants to make the highlight play, or wants to try to dribble through everything. But I don't think you see much of that when he's playing with the young guys. I think he understands that, the margin for error is a lot smaller there. And he, I think, just takes every possession a little bit more seriously. And when he's locked in and he's taking every possession seriously, and he's making the right reads, he's attacking defenders, both on the perimeter to look for a shot, but also to get into the teeth of the defense, I think is something that's just pretty much unstoppable, especially when he's making his mid-range shots like he was today. So, I just thought that he pressed all the right buttons at the right time, and for him to come out the way that he did, and first do it with his playmaking, and then really for the final 2 quarters just do everything as a scorer, was awesome. And then just a really fun cherry on top for him in the fourth quarter to just make 3 pretty tough contested, unassisted threes, just to kind of prove to everyone like, hey man, I am playing like Anthony Stafford's.
It's crazy. It's the volume, the degree of difficulty, to your point, and the fact that he's still making, and he can have, what was he, like 2 of 7 or something against Phoenix, and then he comes out and goes 6 of 9 the next night, and adds those points back on, those percentage points back onto his 3-point percentage. Like, it's just the fact that he's now kept it up for over half the season is insane. I want to talk about Rob Dillingham next, and then we'll get into the rotation overall and how that looked a little different tonight. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of the Locked On Wolves Postcast is brought to us by our friends at TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, where you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available at TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, so no Mike Conley in this game, which meant Nickeil Alexander-Walker started. Last night we had no Naz Reid, and then tonight, the other kind of wrinkle in the rotation was Julius Randle played 10 minutes before he left with the groin injury. So that meant we knew we were going to get Rob Dillingham minutes. We were pretty confident we were going to see more Jalen Clark based on how he played against the Suns. But we didn't know we were going to get more Luka Garza. And what we ended up getting was a career night for Rob Dillingham, another strong performance for Jalen Clark, even a little bit more offensively from him, and like legit good minutes from Luka Garza well before garbage time. Like, his rotation minutes were effective. He had a couple big shots mixed in, both in the post and outside the arc, which are the two things he does best. It would be hard to find a game where the three of those guys could play, any better. But I guess we should start with Rob Dillingham because he's the one who, is the headliner in terms of like his ceiling, what he could even do for this team still this year in a higher volume or higher minutes role. But just easily the best game of Rob Dillingham's career to date.
Yeah, no question. And I think what I really liked that applies to both Rob Dillingham and Luka Garza that Chris Finch and his staff did in this game was they insulated both of those guys with really strong defenders for the majority of their minutes. So you look at Rob Dillingham. Rob Dillingham played a good amount of his minutes alongside one or both of Jalen Clark or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So you have other perimeter defenders there that are able to take kind of the main guard or the secondary guard as well. And Utah played a decent amount of 3-guard lineups tonight between Keontae George, Colin Sexton, and Isaiah Collier, and then also too, with Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench as well. Bryce Sensabaugh being a guy that you can probably stick a guard on and feel fine about that. So it helped Rob in that regard as well. But then with Luka, in Luka's minutes, he played in that first stretch in the second quarter. He played with Rudy Gobert, and then in his second stretch in the third quarter, he played with Jalen Clark and Naz Reid. So had enough defenders around him, and in that third quarter, I think Utah had Eubanks out there, which is a pretty good matchup for him, or it was John Collins and Eubanks as the two main bigs out there, and also got some minutes against Kyle Filipowski, the rookie from Duke. So it wasn't like there was a whole lot going out there where he was really able to get abused, considering that a lot of those guys for Utah are playing a more traditional style of play as a big man, where you're in drop coverage, you're setting screens and you're rolling, you're not doing a whole lot of pick and popping. So yeah, I thought that Luka was really good. We can get into him in a minute, but with Rob, I'm so impressed with what we saw from Rob Dillingham. I think the number one thing with Rob that we saw early in the year was that he really struggled to score from two because he was getting his shot blocked quite frequently. And then, the kind of second biggest issue was his turnovers. And he did have 4 turnovers tonight. But I think the one thing that we need to give Rob Dillingham some grace on is that the length and athleticism on the defensive end of the floor, going from the NCAA to the NBA, is a ginormous step up. And for a small guard who, won a lot with athleticism and ball handling and things like that at Kentucky, he can still win with those things. And he's still proven that he can win with those things in the NBA. But the way that you have to create passing angles is a little bit more difficult and is a little bit more nuanced and takes some time. And what we've seen from Rob that he's been able to counteract some of that is that he's really good at setting up screens. And he's shown some really good synergy with really all of the bigs that he's played with in terms of kind of being able to maximize the screens that the big guys are setting and being able to kind of create a runway from there. And then once he's gotten that runway, I think he's done a really good job of being able to score, whether it's in the floater range or pulling up in the mid range. He was really good tonight. Made 5 of his 6 2-point attempts, 3 of his 5 3-point attempts. And again, a variety of pull-up threes, catch and shoot threes. So I just think his confidence is all the way there right now. And I think, it's at a point now where I think, you're pretty comfortable playing Rob Dillingham, more than just the 10 minutes a game. Now that we've seen it from him for a 7-game stretch now of him being pretty solid. And again, I think that now you feel confident enough in what he's doing on the offensive end of the floor that's going to make up for some of the shortcomings on the defensive end of the floor, especially going up against reserve guards. I can't say enough good things about what Rob did tonight.
Yeah, and that was the whole bet with drafting him, right? Like, we don't need to go too far down that path, but I mean, like, when they traded up to get Rob Dillingham, the idea was, look, we're not going to be able to add any offensive punch. The upside of Rob Dillingham is greater than anything we're going to be able to do in free agency or via trades because of the cap situation and the roster situation, the way that we're built. And so this is best case scenario, not necessarily, well, actually, yeah. I mean, tonight's pretty close to best case scenario, at least right now for Rob Dillingham. But the idea was he could be so good offensively in theory that it overcomes some of those defensive shortcomings. Plus you have your Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walkers and Jalen Clarks and Anthony Edwards that can make up for some of that. It's kind of like the super version of why the Wolves were good enough when Jordan McLaughlin was on the floor, right? Like, Jordan McLaughlin was undersized, obviously nowhere near as talented offensively as Rob Dillingham, but they were good when McLaughlin was on the floor because they were able to overcome some of the defensive shortcomings, and he was a better defender than Rob. That's maybe not a great comparison, but it's the same idea that you can overcome it because the offense works so much better with him on the floor. And this is an example of exactly that. Like, if Rob Dillingham is going to be this good offensively, and it's not going to, like, if he has a more consistent role moving forward, he's still a young rookie, an undersized rookie. It might not happen every night, but like, this is what it can look like. And against certain opponents, like, it's gonna pop even more. So huge game for him. And certainly, especially with the Dante DiVincenzo injury, like, even if he's back in 2-3 weeks, it's going to be hard to not find minutes for Dillingham. Now, Jalen Clark, I mean, who knows? Like, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. He's only played 2 games in the rotation now, but what's that look like when DiVincenzo comes back? I mean, like, he was so good defensively again in this game. He had the Keontae George assignment initially. And like you talked about last night on the postcast, like, he's so fluid defensively, looks the part, and actually looked fairly comfortable offensively. He had an air ball mixed in there, but, like, besides that, I mean, he made a 3. I think he had a nice bucket inside as well, if I remember right. Like, he just looked comfortable. And he also is making the case to be a regular member of the rotation moving forward, even if it's in smaller, more bite-sized minutes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, just you can sense that I think the offense has, a sense of pace and space when Dillingham is at the controls. And it was really evident in this game. I mean, when Rob Dillingham was on the floor in this game, in his 23 minutes, Timberwolves had an offensive rating of 181.4, an assist to turnover ratio of 3.3, and they shot 61% from 2 and 77% from 3. They were 13 of 17 from 3 in the minutes that Rob Dillingham was on the floor. And a lot of those threes that they created were wider than wide open. Whether those were kickbacks to Garza and pick and pop, Dillingham just walking into wide open threes, Ant walking into wide open threes. Like, in terms of the quality of looks you're getting.
Yeah, he had one skip pass from the right wing. I think it was in the fourth quarter. It was like right when it was about to be garbage time. So it might have been Ant or Nikhil or somebody hit a left corner three, and Rob just it was a perfect skip pass to the opposite corner. And those are the types of plays that he can make off the dribble because of the threat. Like, guys know he could score. I mean, he's had 2 games in a row now. He's had, a really tough scoop shot layup where he puts English on the ball and gets it up and over somebody. You don't know how he does it, but guys know he could score. And so that's going to open up some of these additional passing lanes too.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think it's just the creativity that he has with the ball in his hands is something that, the Timberwolves just don't really have outside of Ant. And I think there's a premium price on that. And for it to be for a kid who's 19, 20 years old, and has all the talent that you're looking for, is going to fill out his frame a little bit, is going to understand some more of the nuances of the game, learning from someone like Mike Conley and Joe Ingles too, for sure, as another veteran that's been a playmaker and definitely understands how to create more of those passing angles. And so I'm just so excited to see what we get from Rob here moving forward.
All right. Anything else? We talked already about Garza. Anything else on Garza? I mean, he was good when it mattered and he was good in garbage time. I think I don't know that we need to do too much big picture on Luka, but he's the ultimate, can play in a pinch. We saw this last year when I think it was actually against Utah when they were down. It was one of the few games where he played rotation minutes. It was a Utah game, then a Denver game last year where Luka was great. I think they ultimately maybe lost the Denver game, but plug and play. I mean, he can get you what you need offensively, and certain matchups are going to be challenging, like the Phoenix matchup and the brief minutes he played last night was challenging for him defensively. But certain matchups, he can hang with basically anybody and give you what you need on the offensive end of the floor.
Yeah, I think it's certainly commendable how ready he is to play whenever his number is called. I don't think there's very many moments where he just gets played off the floor immediately and there's just nothing that he's providing on the offensive end of the floor. His confidence is never going to be shaken on the offensive end. He is so kind of in tune with his own game on the offensive end of the floor, always plays within himself. His shot selection is really good. And I think that's valuable, knowing that if you're Chris Finch, because you're probably going to miss Julius Randle here for a few of these games at home, because we know that groins and potential groin strains are not 1 or 2 game injuries generally. So if they do find themselves in situations where they're going to go to Garza more, I think that you'll be able to kind of see, all right, who's their matchup? Let's try to insulate Garza with McDaniels and Gobert, or really strong perimeter defenders, so we can try to switch and pick and rolls if we need to, and then switch back in different situations. So there's different ways that you can mitigate it. But I mean, hey, he can fill it up in a hurry, and if he's going to continue to be this efficient when his number's called upon and show some really good synergy with other bench guys he's playing with, sure, give him 10, 12 minutes a game and see what he can do while Randall's out if the matchup calls for it. So yeah, certainly have to give Luka, his flowers for what he did, independent of whom the opponent was.
All right, let's talk. We got to talk a little bit in Akil. We'll put a bow on this one. Then we'll look ahead to Wolves Wizards coming up next. That's how we'll close the postcast today. Today's episode of the Locked On Wolves postcast on Locked On Sports Minnesota is brought to us by our friends at Gametime. Attending any playoff game is an unforgettable experience that can bring fans together. Any sport, just attend the how special playoff games are, special postseason games are, is awesome. You can get playoff tickets for whatever sport is your favorite sport at Gametime. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You can use Gametime Picks to find tickets for really anything. Browse through deals there. You can find great value for all kinds of seats. The Super Deal is always an especially impressive place to search. It offers the best value for the event that you're looking for. The app's features like seat views before you buy, an all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee will give you peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so a couple more notes on this one. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, second consecutive game with 5 or more made threes. He started this game. He had a season high 23, I think, off the bench, 23, 25 last night against Phoenix. He started a little bit more slowly in this game, but ended with 15 points. All of his points coming on three-pointers, 5 of 10 outside the arc. He also had 5 assists and only 1 turnover in what effectively was the starting point guard role. Obviously, Ant initiates a lot of the offense, but he was, plugging in the spot of Mike Conley, who missed the game with the sprained thumb. So another strong game for Nickeil stepping in. Naz was also great. He had 12, 4, and 4 off the bench. All 5 of his shot attempts were threes, and he made 4 of them. 4 assists, 0 turnovers for Naz. And, single game plus minus in a game like this is always really wacky. But Naz Reid was a plus 35 in a game that won by 25. Jalen Clark was a plus 34. So Nickeil, Naz, more strong performances from those guys. Not that that's a surprise, but they were both fantastic in this one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, for Nickeil, I think what we've seen sometimes is when he slots into the starting lineup, he tries to do a little bit too much or thinks that, he's got to play a little bit differently because he's a starter and maybe needs to shoot the ball when maybe he shouldn't, or tries to make too many ambitious passes or just kind of, tries to be someone he's not at times. And that was certainly not the case tonight. He did a wonderful job of just playing within himself, made simple passes, was aggressive as a defensive rebounder, stuck his nose in and had a couple of really nice contested rebounds and pushed the pace, I thought, pretty well after he got rebounds or received outlet passes from guys. And again, I think has done a better job over the course of, his tenure with the Wolves of picking his spots, when to shoot, and has been really valuable for this team at the start of the fourth quarter, much like he was last season. He was a legitimate weapon at the start of fourth quarters last season and had a way of taking games from, are the Wolves going to win? Are they not going to win? To really resounding Timberwolves wins, or, the Wolves are down 5 and he makes 3 threes in the early part of the fourth quarter. And all of a sudden they're up 2 and, now they've got all the momentum, and then the starters come back in and they just close it. And so I think the momentum shifting plays that he's made has been really important. So it's been fun to see that for him. And I'm glad that they didn't overdo it with Naz in this game without Randall coming off an illness. You heard Chris Finch, or, on the broadcast, at least when they were doing the thing where they talk about Finch right before the game, you could tell he looked at Naz and he said, "Are you full go tonight? Like, can I play you whenever?" And you couldn't see what Naz was saying to him, but I'm glad that Finch felt that he could turn more to a Garza or a Jalen Clark in those types of situations, just so that Naz is feeling good and refreshed going into this homestand. But again, I have to give a shout out to Jalen Clark. First career made 3-point shot in this game, 6 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals in 17 minutes. What did he end up with in plus minus in this game?
Jalen Clark was a plus 34. Naz was a
plus 34
in
17 minutes.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I think he's plus 43 now in the last 24 hours, which is pretty good. And just really quick on Clark. Utah turned it over on 24% of their possessions when Clark was in the game tonight. Pretty incredible. And they had a defensive rating of like 60 last night when he was in there, and they had a defensive rating of 91 when he was in the game tonight. So for them to turn it over on like 8 of the 33 possessions that they had, I think just his activity level on that end of the floor has been tremendous and really fun to watch.
Yeah, he did get called for 5 fouls in 17 minutes in this game, and that's going to come with the territory, but that is okay when you've got this level of perimeter defenders. And also, he's never really going to be asked to play more than 20 minutes max in any given game anyway, and so he can kind of go out there and be a wrecking ball a little bit. And I think the very first defensive possession, I think it was Keontae George, might've been Jordan Clarkson. One of them went in for a layup and scored, and it was a tough shot, and they didn't call a foul, and it was actually really good defense, and it wasn't a foul, and they correctly did not call a foul. And it was like immediately, it just like, perfect defensive technique. Everything about Jalen Clark on the defensive end of the floor is it's just so impressive. And we talked a lot about it last night too, being a former defensive player of the year in college and all that too. So,
and I'd rather him have 5 fouls than no fouls. Like,
yes,
I'd rather him be really aggressive and set a tone.
Well, it's different than the Jaden,
than
the bad Jaden games where he has 3 silly fouls, or the bad cat fouls in the past, right? Like, these undoubtedly were all fouls of aggression, and not dumb fouls of aggression, like frustration fouls, right? Like, they were all because he was defending, like truly defending. So
it reminds me a lot of how Nickeil first worked his way into the rotation after he got traded here a couple years ago. So it's been fun to see him take kind of a similar path.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next up, the Wolves are off Friday night. They play Saturday against Washington. It's the first game of, I believe, a 5-game homestand for Minnesota. And until last weekend, the Wolves had gone over a month. I talked about this on the show the other day. They went over a month without playing consecutive home games. Like, it was before Christmas was the last time they had 2 straight home games. They had 2 last weekend, or I guess it was Saturday, Monday. And then now they finally get a 5-game homestand, and against, some winnable games. They have Washington on Saturday. Washington is I don't know. I say whatever you want. They've lost 16 games in a row. It's their second losing streak of more than 15 games this season, coming up on the trade deadline here in less than 2 weeks. Like, there's going to be trades. It's likely a checked out team. I mean, Washington is they lost to the Lakers by 38 points tonight. The last time they won was January 1st, was New Year's Day. They beat the Bulls. And they've had, I don't know. They've won twice in a row, one time this year. Like, they've won 6 games. I don't know. However you slice it, they're awful. They're dead last in every category. They're 30th in offense, 30th in defense. This is we'll call it a winnable game for Minnesota on Saturday.
Could you name the Wizards head coach?
Oh, man, you really put me on the spot. I know that I thought when they played the Wizards earlier this year, I thought to myself, I didn't know who their coach was. And then
I've had the same thought. I couldn't tell you.
It was Unseld last year, and he got fired.
Well, and then, put up in the front office.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Brian Keith.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. And yeah, it just goes to show, they're just so out of the thought space of anybody with how bad they've been. Kyle Kuzma and Jonas Valanciunas are more than likely going to be traded at the trade deadline. And it's just not a team that plays winning basketball at all. You have some intriguing pieces like Koulibaly and Kaishan George and Bub Carrington have all, kind of had their flashes, and Alex Sarr too has had some really nice moments for them, but may not play in this game because he turned an ankle earlier this week and has missed a couple of games. So if he's not out there, then obviously it's even tougher for them. Again, the Wolves did not play well in Washington for most of that game a couple weeks ago, and then really turned it on. So I think, again, Chris Finch, for my money, pressed the blow up at my team button at the right part of the season. And, they got over this hump with a really tough schedule. And now they've got 7 of their next 8 at home. And, 4 of the next 5 opponents they have here. So the 5-game homestand, and 4 of those 5 are against non-playoff teams. And more than likely the Wolves are going to be, somewhat heavy favorites, depending on when and if that De'Aaron Fox deal happens. So it's just a time where the Wolves have to put forth another effort like they did tonight, where, if someone's not bringing it, go to the next guy on the bench who's kind of juiced up and ready to go. Again, I'd like to have it be another game where it's kind of like tonight, where, Ann only plays 35 minutes. Nas is sub 30, Rudy's sub 35, where you don't have to wear out a lot of your guys, and you're able to, lean on some of your bench guys a little bit more, especially if they're going to play as well as they did tonight, scoring 61 points.
Yeah, and let's hope the Wolves don't. They've had some struggles at home this year. They're over 500, of course, at home, but relative to last year and where they should be playing at home, or how they should be playing at home, that's been an issue. Quick on Brian Keefe, because I, of course, had to do the quick Brian Keefe research. He was the interim last year when they moved Wes Unseld to the front office, and it always works when you hire the interim to be your permanent head coach. Antonio Pierce of the Raiders, and it's a great track record in every sport. His claim to fame, I'm just going to say, based on his Wikipedia, is he took over the responsibility for the development of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in 2019 with the Thunder. So there you go. That's why he's in Washington.
That's a pretty good first bullet point to have on the resume.
Yeah, he's got an extensive coaching career. We'll say that. Okay, that's all we got on this one. Of course, we'll have the postcast again Saturday. I believe Luke will be back with Jack on Saturday night. We do this live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube after every Timberwolves game. And the audio can be found at Locked On Wolves, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And I have a daily show there Monday through Friday, Locked On Wolves. Be back on Friday. We'll have a full podcast dedicated to this game on Friday. Again, you can get the audio from this podcast or from this postcast. If you don't catch it live, you can listen to it on Locked On Wolves later. And again, we do it after every single game. A big thank you for watching tonight. A big thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.